This morning we're going to be looking at a couple really important things. These PowerPoint presentations relate to Unit 2 in our course shell. And there's actually going to be a pair of them that are going to be happening today. So we're going to be going through 2 PowerPoints. I hope to get through this first one before lunch, and then we'll come back and do the other one. Depending on how fast they go, we might even be able to get to the second one before we break for lunch. All right, so this first one talks about a concept that, typically IT people don't really even think about because, we're so enveloped in coding. But when you're thinking about the holistic nature of a project, it really is something that comes into play pretty heavily. The whole point is really kind of figuring out who is using your site, why, and how you're going to design for them so it's most effective, to kind of maximize their utility and their user experience. Why would we even bother to go ahead and do the research? These are kind of your 5 bullet points. You're trying to figure out who they are, how you're going to get them involved, how you're going to gather your information. You got to figure out what kind of groups they fall into, and then you're going to end up generating what they call user requirements. Now, you guys maybe heard a little bit about that kind of like user requirement statement in some of your programming classes, maybe not. But when you're developing a program, you have to think about what the users, excuse me folks, what the users are intending for the website, what it is we are building towards. In many cases when you're building applications, you guys don't think about that because your user requirements are that you get the assignment done as listed in the book as indicated by your instructor. But when you're building something for a real client, game changes. You're not doing it so you can get exercise 15 correct. You're doing it so that you can get this customer happy with what they're doing. All right. Users fall into a bunch of different categories. Are they internal to your organization? Here at Gateway, we have a lot of websites that are custom just to the people inside the organization. We have an intranet. In fact, we have a couple different intranets. We have, employee websites. We have departmental websites. And how much we look at them, of course, varies. It's a much different approach than if you are an external customer, right? The internal stuff, for example, you have to log into it, right? It's not for public consumption. Do you have to be in the building to do it? No, you can do it external to the building. But these are things to consider. Like many people out on the internet, chances are your users might fall into these other 2 categories, or at least this tends to be the mindset of a lot of developers as you're beginning, because you think that this is where all the work is. When you think about how our economy functions, right? You think about, all right, I got paid, I'm going to the store, I got plenty of money in my account, and I'm going to buy all this stuff, right? So you're thinking, I'm the consumer, I'm going to a business, and I'm spending my money, right? And the model there is what we call the business to consumer model. And that's a big part of our economy. But guess what? In terms of the size of the impact on the economy, it's a fraction of business to business. Same is kind of true with websites, that you have a certain amount of internet traffic, the website development that goes with it, that you kind of assume to be this business to consumer model. And the truth is there's a whole lot more going on that's business to business on a professional level. It's information driving, that type of thing. So even though you tend to think of yourself doing most of your work in those 2 bottom categories, truth is there's a lot more work in the top 2, or the top bullet, and not only that, there's a lot more money in it as well. So these are things to think about, because an informational website can be simple. An e-commerce site can be as simple as paying for a solution and dropping in some images and descriptions. So these are things to think about. So how do you gather up your information? Well, there's a lot of different ways. Well, talk to somebody, right? What is it you're looking for in your site? And you might go to your client and you might ask them exactly that. And your client will go, Well, I think that I should do this because Joe down the street's doing it too. That might not be the best answer. Just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. You need to do what's right for your audience. What if this other place down the street's totally missing the mark? And how are you really to know that? So you talk to people, but really you don't talk to the people that necessarily run the organization. Certainly the organization has some motives behind what they're doing and want to have certain things present, but the truth is the person coming to the site is the one that actually matters. The person using it is the one that matters. People at Netflix might say, well, I think it's a great idea to have like this new menu structure. But every time Netflix changes something, do you get a little upset? Because like, hey, it's not like it was yesterday. Or do you ever go to like a site like Time Warner now is really big on pushing their like on-demand feature. Like I always like watch through my tablet or whatever, and it used to be they'd drop you into the live TV part of it. Now I notice every time I launch the app, they put me into the on-demand section. I'm like, all right, I get it. You guys are pushing the service. Fine, I'll look through stuff this way. And then I go to like a TV show and I hover over the image and I'm like, where's the info? That's what Netflix does, right? Or Hulu does the same thing. You hover over the thing, you're expecting to get some information. Gosh, I got to click. That makes me really upset. I'm going to go back to Netflix. Now, that sounds really dumb, right? Because we're talking about a mouse click and a mouse click back. But that's the kind of thing that gets users to leave your site and go to somebody else. So how do you find that information out? You think Netflix just kind of happened on that by accident? No, they came up with like a strategy that I think is pretty effective. Now, the one strategy I wish they fix is the kind of stuff they put up on my screen every time, because they always seem to suggest the same stuff, right? So they might have a little, fixing to do themselves, but that's just an idea. But there's all these different ways to get information. Has anybody ever participated in product surveys, focus groups, secret shopping, any of that kind of stuff? Okay. Where you're called in and it's like, here, smell this fabric softener. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What don't you like about it? Would you buy it? That kind of thing. And those are big. Companies pay big money for that stuff. I used to be one of those people that's like, you know what, I don't want any scent in my laundry detergent. I don't want to, I hate all those smells, right? Because I walk down the laundry soap aisle and it just makes me gag. But the truth is, when it's a piece of clothing that's just been washed, it's kind of nice to know, yeah, that's clean. Right? Or it's sort of clean, So there's things like that. One story I always love to share is like for a while, when my wife was a stay-at-home mom, she was a secret shopper for Starbucks. And she kind of happened into it. I forget how she got into it, but for a while there, she was like going to 3 or 4 or 5 Starbucks a day. She didn't want to throw the coffee out, but they would basically send her in, and they would tell her, go through the drive-through, order the caramel macchiato, whatever, and then she would order it, and she would rank everything from like how they talked to her, how it was handed to her, did they put the little stopper in, what was the temperature of the coffee, what did it weigh, did they get the order right, that type of thing. And they were very scientific about it. And they paid her really well too. Plus she got free coffee. But that's the kind of thing. Another thing that's very interesting is this last one, and it's one that web people don't really think about a lot, to like take a website that you've created, have somebody sit down and you watch how they're using it. It's like, that's what they clicked on? I never would have thought they clicked on that. So these are pretty important things. I'm not really sure I'm going to expound on this too much, but your book does have some information about what techniques are useful for given scenarios. A really good example of like dealing more with the intranet and internal kind of customers is when you're working on certain systems that are canned systems. So for example, like if you're a bank teller, right? And I always use this as an example because a lot of banking systems are legacy systems because they've been around for so long. And people might even still, in some capacities, use green screens to do bank transactions. And people will walk in and go, oh my God, this is ancient. This is horrible to use, right? But when you get to know the system, maybe it isn't all that horrible, right? And then just because you're taking that system and you're moving it to, let's say, a graphical Windows environment, doesn't mean it necessarily works better. In fact, the technology underneath might still be the same. And then you'll get people that'll get into these situations where it's like, it used to be I could just press F11 to print, and now I got to go click on this, click on that, hit the drop down, click OK, and then click, and then fast forward, and then I can print. You know? So obviously the person that was, designing it never sat down and talked to the person actually using it to figure out what actually works. Do you think that companies like Amazon, for example, don't do this kind of stuff? Right? Why do you think they came up with one-click checkout or whatever it's called? Yeah. Easy money. No, but it's also a convenience, right? It's also adapting to the way that people shop, because if you have an Amazon account and you're on your phone, you need to order some laser toner or whatever. I mean, do you really need to go through this complicated checkout process? You always get it from the same vendor. You just go in there, click the product, click checkout. 2 days later, it's on your porch step, right? So it's done for a reason, and there's reasons for these things. Now, if we're really building sites based upon the user as a focus, formally, people that do this type of user research develop what they call personas. Now, you've heard that word and probably never really attributed it to what it means. If I say that Donald Trump has a unique persona, right? He does. He's got a very unique persona. I mean, what would you call his persona? What is it? Arrogant? Okay. I guess he's a successful business person. There's a little bit of arrogance that goes with it. There is. Anybody who's good at something tends to be a little bit arrogant about it, and usually rightly so. Sometimes not so much. And I'm not asking you to quantify the person, but what I'm trying to get you to think about is what it kind of says about the type of person he is. And that's really the important takeaway there. But people who do user research actually formally develop personas, and they do things like this where they will sometimes identify a particular individual that fits a certain demographic. All right? Shelley, I'm looking at you. You married? Kids?
Yes.
Own a house?
Yes.
Own a car?
Yes.
You have life insurance?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, she falls into all these. You didn't even have to answer any of those questions, but I've already kind of formed a certain picture about her, and I can probably make some educated guesses as to the kind of products you buy and what you might look for in a website just based upon that information. Now, that's a very simplistic overview. How old are your children? School age? One is school age and one's older. Okay. Okay. Yeah, but when I say school age, I'm thinking like grade school, high school, meaning the kid lives at home and she's got to buy stuff for him. Right? Right, yeah, I understand. Well, I don't understand yet, but I guess I'm soon to understand. Okay. All right, but that type of thing. But you notice, I kind of already checked off a bunch of those bullets, right? Are you still working at that place that you were working at with Maria? Didn't you guys work together? No. You just know each other.
Yeah, her sister.
Okay, never mind. All right. Are you currently working? You don't have to answer that.
Okay.
All right. But you get the idea. Like if she answered, I'm not working, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Okay. Then I can draw a bunch of other conclusions, right? So these are things that they actually will detail. Here's an example of a formal persona. companies develop something like this, they'll name the person, give an age, tell their occupation, and notice, like, do they know how to use a computer? What do they do with social networking, motivators, etc. Picture, right? What what would you see as a difference? For example, if you're building a video gaming site, what do you suppose this persona would look like? A pimply 15-year-old, right? Right? Or some business professional. That audience is starting to change a little bit too because the gamers have now grown up. But chances are their life priorities switch. Who's the bigger demographic? All right. Now these images come straight out of your book, and you can see that they're taking people here and breaking things down. And if you look at this one's kind of interesting. Um, you know, all the little details that they provide here, and then on top of it, like websites that they look at. Well, this person's got a little Apple logo here. Chances are they probably have an iPhone, right? They're one of those iPhone people. No, it's one of those Android people. Oh look, this person likes Nike. They're all about child slave labor in the Orient, right? Now that sounds ridiculous, right? But people do think that way, right? So is that a positive or negative? I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying. There's conclusions that we draw. There's stereotypes that we build on. All right. Even the image here says something real strong. Try to blot out that image if you can. I mean, this image implies a lot. It speaks more than all this text on the page. But here they're focusing on couples. They're focusing on a couple that obviously cares deeply about each other, that's intimate, at least to some degree, right? They're homeowners, and, what are the things that they do? What are their goals?
In the photo, it looks like they're like trying to get people to be sympathetic to it.
Right. If you're building a website for a real estate firm, what about this person? The Jill of all trades. Yeah, she does seem pretty confident. Very astute observation. You right. Well, see, and this is exactly what's happening. You're looking at the photograph. That's where your eye is drawn. Do you notice something about that? You tend to skip over the words. Next thing you'll probably look at is either the diagram or the headlines. And then if there's something that interests you in particular, then you might dig into the minutia. But it's all the minutia where all the information actually is. So, but they're taking and they're developing these personas and setting these certain parameters and guidelines and thoughts and whatever based around these things. And they will develop personas based upon people they figure fit perfectly into this category. And then when you're sitting there and you're making a decision, you'll come back and you look at this and you go, what would Amanda think about this website design? Right? We're unsure. I don't know. She's aged 28 to 55. Yeah, it's a pretty good gap. Can't look across multiple programs at once. Can't run reports across mobile. So this seems like it's very project focused. All right. Other thing is that I'm sure you guys have probably done empathy maps when you were kids, maybe in grade school. I know I see my kids doing it in school. They do all sorts of stuff that's kind of like new and cutting edge. But these are, whenever you're working with something that's in a visual medium, right? And websites are very much a visual medium. You are dealing with people's reactions. We looked at that couple. We looked at the lady who looked confident, right? And whether you think about it or not, you're making some sort of an emotional, you know, attribution or thought or feeling, or you're making some sort of connection to it. What are the things that are being triggered? Like if I go to a certain website, what does it do to me? What is it trying to drum up inside of me? Is that meeting what we really intend for that person? Like if you're a banking customer and you go to the bank website, what are you trying to instill in the person that's visiting? So, sure, confidence, right? Yeah, convenience maybe, you know, those types of things. So there are these mind maps, and you guys might not ever approach your projects this way, but there are people that work in advertising and work in the visual media that will exactly do this type of thing, and they'll say, all right, so you're visiting this website, what are you feeling? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And they look at that, and even though it seems absolutely um, ridiculous, I'm trying to see if I can read any of these. All right, feeling, clever, witty. What does that say? Insecure, right? And then you might look at it and go, is that really what we were trying? We wanted to make somebody feel insecure? What about it makes you feel insecure? We better change that. And it might be something really dumb like the color. So these are all things. So you end up coming up with a thought. It's like, what actually am I trying to put onto my website? So that's when we talk about content strategy. I mean, you might think it's a great idea to provide certain information where your customer could care less, right? You're going to a newspaper site, so what information do you want? Sports. Let's be real here, right? No, but how about this? TV, right? TV news, radio news. What do they lead with? Traffic and weather. Unless there happens to be some like bomb dropping. Polls open today at 8 o'clock. It's an exciting day for American politics. Traffic today on 94 is, though they might give you a blur, but, the bottom line is people, what's the content strategy? People want to know, like, where the road is blocked, and people want to know what the temperature is going to be. What am I putting on today as I'm dressing? The headlines, I can catch those anytime. See the content strategy? It didn't used to be that way. Somebody got smart and adjusted things to meet that sort of approach. Focus on the text in the red. These are quotes from your book from pretty notable designers. But when you have a goal in mind, right? So think about like the news and weather or the traffic and weather example. So if you have a strategy that's why people are tuning in, it's going to change how you approach it. It's going to change what your goal and your plan are. It's also probably going to be the fact that if you're doing like a morning radio show, that you're probably doing like traffic and weather like every 5, 8, 10 minutes, something like that. And the reason they do that is to make sure that they catch the people. They know what the demographics are. Or how about this? You're driving in Chicago around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening, and you're listening to LUP or whatever that station is down there. Guaranteed you're going to hear a Pink Floyd song or a Van Halen song. Why? Because that's the age of the people that are working. Those are like the 9-to-5ers, and they grew up back in the late 70s, early 80s, going into the 90s, and that's what they used to listen to because they were album rock people, right? They got you figured out. They also know that you want to hear the traffic and the weather, and that you'll listen to 5 minutes of commercial just to get that information. Now everybody has smartphones, so we're kind of breaking these rules. But do we? How many apps do you pull up that have other stuff supplanted in them? Same thing.
Maybe free ones.
All right. When do you need content strategy? Well, that's you better, yeah, yesterday. What stuff I mean, really, you guys think about the projects you guys are building. What stuff really needs to go on the site? Contact info? Perhaps. Does Pepsi Cola need to have an 800 number on their
They
site?
need their corporate whatever contact.
Well, the corporate, but let's take the consumer site. Do you need a phone number? Email address? Contact form? Gallery?
They always want to get their
No.
They just need
No.
pictures of people
All you need is people
walking.
being happy drinking Pepsi
Yeah,
and a Facebook button to go like, and that's about it.
that's true.
Do you understand the mindset here? Now, if they're doing corporate and they're going business to business and they're selling their like soda syrup to like a vendor, completely different approach. So what's the content strategy there? How much does it cost? Can I get it cheaper from Coca-Cola? Do I have to sign a contract? Different mindset. That's it for this one. I am going to record a separate video for the next PowerPoint. We're going to do that after lunch.